In this comparative study, I'll explore the question, to what extent does Power in The Devil Wears Prada, directed by David Frankel, and Roman Holiday, directed by William Wire, represent feminist values, discussed with reference to feminist film theory, the social, political, and social historical context. I will highlight three main points in this study: beauty, where the social, historical, and social political contexts, there is a correlation between beauty and power, the power of having a choice, relating to choice feminism, and the power dynamic between the main protagonists and their relationships with one another. These films are appropriate for comparison as they both have female protagonists, Miranda Priestley and Andy Sash from The Devil Wears Prada, and Princess Anne from Roman Holiday, where they have a lot of power in their place in the world. The opening scene of The Devil Wears Prada highlights to the male gaze, showing the morning routine of multiple women getting ready. Throughout this montage, there are close-ups of the body parts of women, such as their legs, breasts, and lips. Intimate parts of their morning routine are also shown, such as dressing up. The montage introduces us to Andy, who at the beginning of the film juxtaposes the other typical woman. In the film, Runway prioritizes how employees present themselves in the workplace over the quality of work itself. For instance, when Andy comes in for her job interview, Emily instantly judges her for her appearance. Miranda also judges Andy for her appearance and says,
"You have no style or sense of fashion."
Well, I think that depends on what you're...
No. That wasn't a question.
They look down upon her. However, Andy gets a makeover, and this foreshadows her success at Runway, as Emily and her coworker instantly notices her outfit as she comes into the office. Her outfit consists of a Chanel-style tweed jacket, a sequin shirt, and
Wearing the Chanel boots? Yeah.
where the heel boots can signify power and the tweed jacket emphasizes wealth. This conforms to the capitalist values of the text as she's wearing luxurious brands. When Andy starts to care more about her looks, she cares more about her work life, and more importantly, other senior staff members, including Miranda, notice her more. However, beauty, more specifically the costume codes, being an extension of women and their success, these costume codes and beauty standards can also objectify them. This is shown in Andy's personal life. This is demonstrated when Andy and her boyfriend Nate are arguing because Andy is spending too much time at work. However, the argument immediately stops when Andy is seen in a seductive designer outfit, where she's seen as a sexual object. This is also shown similarly when Andy and Nate are arguing again, but she unbuttons her blouse and the fight immediately stops. As a result, Andy's power dressing is noticed in the workplace and in her personal life, but in different ways. In some feminist perspectives, fashion is ambivalent, with many feminists being anti-fashion and seeing things like high heels as restrictive. Power dressing, on the contrary, is a feminist perspective that supports fashion and encourages women to be both masculine through strong silhouettes and feminine through adornment in their dress. In Roman Holiday, even though there was censorship, having an impact on the institutional context, the male gaze is highlighted throughout. At the beginning of the film, with Princess Anne in a royal dress and jewelry, demonstrates power. In this particular scene, princes from around the world are appealing to her, trying to please her. When meeting the princes, she is placed on an elevated surface showing superiority to them. Despite everyone in the room wearing luxurious clothing, she stands out due to the volume of her dress and the amount of jewelry she is wearing. However, after she leaves the Colosseum, she's dressed in a blouse and a long skirt. With this attire, she's less noticeable, blending into the crowd. This highlights the costume codes of status. The typical costume codes of women in the 1950s are long skirts and blouses. For instance, when she's getting interrogated by the police are unaware of her true identity due to the way she's dressed like an ordinary civilian. Similarly to The Devil Wears Prada, others around the protagonist, Princess Anne, care more about her attire and appearance rather than the main character themselves. For example, in this scene,
"Why can't I sleep in pajamas?" "Pajamas? Just the top part." "Did you know there are people who sleep with absolutely nothing on at all?"
I rejoice to say that I did not.
In this social historical context, Princess Anne wants to follow unconventional feminist values by sleeping in pajamas and suggesting to sleep without any clothes on instead of her nightgown, whilst her server hates the idea of this. Additionally, when American news agency prepares their questions to ask Princess Anne, they ask,
by the way, what was she wearing?"
Both movies follow the theme of power dressing and beauty. They emphasize this by dressing the main characters in luxurious brands and excessive jewelry. One of the similarities between the two films is the theme of choice. At the end of both films, the main characters make a choice to go back to the life they came from. In The Devil Wears Prada, Annie goes back to her old self, not wearing luxurious clothing brands to work and working for something she's actually passionate about. In Roman Holiday, Princess Anne makes a choice to go back to the Colosseum to do her duty as a princess. Both of their actions follow choice feminism, which offers a worldview that does not challenge the status quo, that promises to include all women regardless of their choice and abstains judgment from one another. This theory was developed in third wave feminism. Looking at the timeline, Roman Holiday was created after the first wave and The Devil Wears Prada was created between the third and fourth waves. Given the social, historical, and social political context of the women in the 1950s, women were dependent on their fathers or husbands to make most decisions on their behalf. In the beginning of Roman Holiday, it's evident that Princess Anne has no control over her daily routine whatsoever. For instance,
10:35, inspection of Food and Agriculture Organization will present you with an olive tree,
No, thank you.
which you will accept.
Thank you.
in addition to complaining about how she has no control, she also mentions to Joe,
I'm a good cook. I could earn my living at it. I can sew too and clean a house and iron. I learned to do all those things. I just haven't had the chance to do it with anyone.
However, once she's free from the Colosseum, it is clear that Princess Anne is in her own position of power to make her own choices as she explores Rome, whilst Joe follows her around. Whilst towards a modern 21st century audience would find this extreme, as having freedom of choice is normalized, for an audience during the 1950s, this foreshadows the emergence of post-feminism, which is a concept developed in the 1980s. Meanwhile, in The Devil Wears Prada, it's clear that everyone in the film has a basic choice, whether to do their job or not, or whether to follow Miranda or not. Unlike Princess Anne's choice, Miranda and Andy choose to make career advancements. Miranda constantly chooses work over her personal life. She's constantly looking for advancements and prioritizing her career even if it puts her personal life and relationships at jeopardy. She is seen as the matriarch in the workplace and her personal life as she is the head of Runway and leads her family. For instance, in an argument with her husband,
Waited for you for almost an hour.
I told you that the cell phones didn't work. Nobody could get a signal
And
out.
I knew what everyone in that restaurant was thinking. There he is, waiting for her again.
the choice of choosing work over personal life breaks the stereotype that women are expected to focus on their family and relationships rather than concentrating on their career and work. For Andy, her final choice to leave Runway represents society's accepted role of women with power. Unlike Miranda, she prefers to have a work-life balance. Similarly to Princess Anne, they both come back to their true selves, perhaps showing the patriarchal voice people have over women with power. They both realize that they have duties to do and conform with their own values. Finally, in the two films, it is evident that power is juxtaposed between the two main characters. In The Devil Wears Prada, it is clear that Miranda has power at Runway. Devil Wears Prada cinematographer Florian Bauhaus clearly shows the power dynamic between Miranda and Andy using camera angles and shots to show visual hierarchy. For example, using worm shots, Miranda dominating the frames and Andy constantly being positioned below eye level to show her subordination. Additionally, the direction of body language shows Miranda and Andy's power dynamic. For instance, when Andy is being instructed, Miranda is standing whilst Andy is sitting. Miranda constantly throws her bags and coats on Andy's desk, showing that she has power and ownership over Andy. When walking in the streets of New York, Miranda is seen leading the pack whilst everyone else trails behind. It can be described that Miranda is a power feminist, where she represents the subordinate narrative of women and power in society. Through this representation of Miranda's power, it is clear that this film follows feminist values. However, this could be a hyper-feminist reading. In Roman Holiday, juxtaposing the social, historical, and social political norms at the time, Joe and Princess Anne have equal power. Princess Anne's actions would be considered outrageous for a woman during the 1950s, whilst if Joe does this would be normalized. For example, fighting and telling him what to do.
You may sit down.
Towards a modern 21st century audience, this would be a feminist reading, as men and women would have equal power and choice. In conclusion, both texts show feminist values to an extent. For instance, the ability to have a choice and freedom of expression in beauty and clothing. However, it is evident that primarily The Devil Wears Prada highlights hyper-feminist values due to Miranda Priestley's matriarchal behavior, and Roman Holiday foreshadows a post-feminist reading for its social, historical, and social political context due to Princess Anne's actions and behavior towards the people around her. However, it is normalized in a 21st century society.